Hey everyone, so I'm getting ready now to glue up the wedge tenons. What I've done is I've cut a series of these wedges, including a couple of extra. Uh, the geometry, the angles of these things, as much as I could try to control it, these are a little bit off. So I have one that's a little bit thinner, and if I put this thing in, it just doesn't really work. It doesn't give this wedge the expansion that I really want. So this one I'll keep round, but for the most part I like what these two do, and you can see that this moves all the way over to your left. This one will pull over to the right, and it really expands these to what I need and where I want them to be. In thinking about what we're asking these wedges to do, if I have a really narrow wedge here, you can hear, or you can kind of see that it bottoms out inside of the mortise, and so it doesn't extend over onto the full width of where this mortise is. So I don't really get any gain if these things are too thin. I suppose I could throw a second wedge in here, but at that point I would question what type of strength I'm getting out of this one wedge, and always keeping in mind the pressures of gluing up. So I would try to simplify this experience as much as possible. So I'm going to keep these on hand, but for the most part these are the two that I want. And you'll notice the end of this is fairly blunt. I had to cut it down so that it doesn't bottom out inside of that mortise. So keeping these things separate, I'm ready to get going with next steps. The thing I want to point out here is that when I'm gluing this thing up, I know that I'm going to get a lot of squeeze out here with the glue, and so I don't want any glue to get onto this surface. If I've pre-finished, maybe that's a different story. I can easily wipe this off if the finish is there. But if I haven't finished, like what's going on here, I need to consider how to keep this thing clean throughout the process. There we go. So I have some blue tape here, and blue tape has the least amount of tack. It's easy enough to pull this off after I'm done with the gluing up. So I want to get this really close to the joining surface, but not touching. You'll notice that from the piece I just put down and the one that I did off camera, there's still a little halo around there, and I have a separation between these two. The number one problem that I think most people get into when they start preparing for gluing up is they over tape. And so what they'll do is they'll start taping this thing up without the tenon in place. And then they're only looking at this area as the goal. And so if I were to do that and put this thing into place, I'm going to have the tape well underneath the shoulder of my tenon, and this now becomes a permanent part of your piece, which is never a good look. So just be cautious of that. Make sure that when you are taping these things off, everything is dry fit, and you're also giving yourself a little bit of space for this tape. We don't want to have this thing overlap at all underneath our joinery. And I'll do one more side, and then we'll start to do the glue up. Okay, so you can see that I have that space all the way around. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm ready to start getting into the scariest part. The scariest part is always the glue up. Okay. Alright, so I have these things organized in the way that I want to for laying them out. I have not flipped this piece around. This one is in the right orientation, so I don't have to think about anything. I apply glue in the areas that I need to, drop this thing in, and try to keep this as simple and as straightforward as possible. There are a couple ways of applying the adhesive, and I'm just going to use PVA glue for this glue up. A lot of people use their fingers to apply glue. There's nothing wrong with that, but you do have to be cautious about getting that glue on parts that were unintended in your glue up. If I were to use my fingers, everything that I touch after I touch that glue is now going to have glue that you need to remember to clean up. And that sometimes could be exciting and dangerous, and sometimes a pain to clean up after the fact. Okay, so it's not pretty. I just need to get it on and distribute this everywhere. Getting a little bit inside of this little slot is fine. The wedges are going to go in there anyway. You'll notice I don't have any adhesive on the shoulders. That's all end grain anyway. It doesn't do me any good for holding this piece to that one. So a nice bead all the way around the perimeter. With that done, now I'm ready to start throwing this one in. Alright. Am I still in frame? I am. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm not getting any squeeze out on the perimeter here, which is good. I did get some squeeze out on the bottom, not worried about that because that's going to go in our taped areas. With these wedges, I absolutely want to put adhesive on. And so I got a little bit there. Getting that one started. And then I don't want to take too long to get glue on this next piece because the glue could already start to set up on that. So now I go over here. So I want to be cautious about how I drive these things in. I could just use pressure with just pushing them in, but if you've done this correctly, the glue is going to start to set up and it's not going to allow you the pressure that you need. So I want to have some type of tool to strike these with. Metal hammer is always better than a wooden mallet because of that tone right there. You can always hear when you're striking this and it'll tell you so much faster on a metal hammer than a wooden mallet. Mallet's a much duller thud, whereas this, it starts to change tone and pitch as you drive these home. The thing I'm doing, you'll notice, is I'm going back and forth. If I were to drive one wedge in and bottom that out, I could have extended this wedge and driven the tenon too far over here, so I can't drive this wedge into place. So I'm trying to sneak up on both of them evenly. That one's done. Cool. So I have good closure top and bottom. The edges are in good shape. And now I have a little bit of squeeze out on these sides, which is great. I'm not going to worry about the outside for cleaning up, but for the parts where I do have squeeze out, I need to clean those things up. And this is really the benefit of having the tape in place. The tape is going to help to protect that material from when I do clean it up. Some people talk about leaving that in place until the glue dries, and then you're forced with a situation where you have to chip it out or carve it out. Both of those are no fun. So I like to get in there right now while that glue is still wet. This tool right here I've had around forever and ever and ever. I would argue that this is one of the most important tools in the box, but just scraping this stuff out, washing it out of that joint while you still can. I'm diluting the glue so it's going to drive into the pores of the wood, but the tape is doing a great job of making sure that it doesn't spread and create this signature of diluted glue all the way around. So by doing this, getting rid of the glue and then progressively less and less water to wash this, now I have a nice clean surface and the tape has done its job, so I can start getting rid of this stuff now too. And the most important piece is I don't need to clean this up later after that glue is dried. Alright. I'll do the same on the tenon side. There we are. If there was any squeeze out here, I would do the same in these areas. But I just want to clean up the top or the end grain here because I know I'm going to need to trim up these wedges after the glue is dried, and that way these things will not be proud anymore and they won't get caught on anything, and it looks much more finished. If I were to try to cut these things off now, I could, but that glue is going to get compacted in the teeth of your saw, so it's better to let this thing dry. Half an hour is all you need. But as far as this goes, there's really no way to remove this mortise from the tenon because the wedges are in place. I don't need to clamp these wedges in. The physical resistance that you're getting from the mortise pushing in is all the clamping you're going to need, and this joint will not go anywhere. All right, good luck everybody.